Taylor Swift with a super one called You Need to Calm Down.
94.3
This is Good Morning Mumbai with Rishi K.
Radio 1.
An exciting author, an exciting non-fiction book. It's called Happiness Samurai, and I'm very pleased to welcome the author, Mani Anchan. The beauty about this book is you can find it in both Kindle audiobook form currently, and you can go and pre-book, but you will also have a paperback edition in all on-ground stores when things get back to normalcy. And up ahead on the show, we're also going to tell you how you can go out and book that currently on the author's website. Mani, wonderful to see you. How are you doing this morning? And most importantly, are your friends and family safe and healthy, buddy? And, have people started getting their first jabs?
Yeah, thank you first for having me on the show. It's a privilege to talk to you and spread awareness about happiness and mental health. All in my family are good. Thank you so much. And I hope to all the listeners and to your family, near and dear ones, staying safe. I got my first shot a couple of weeks ago. I'm looking forward to the next shot, 20th of May. That's my date.
Thanks for checking in. All well at my end too. Mani, the fact that you were a very successful banker for the longest time, and it's almost as though you found your calling and you gave it up. And today you're an author, motivational speaker. Was it something that happened gradually, or did you have one of those eureka moments intuitively? Let's talk about that first, please.
My mother was an economist at the RBI, so I think banking was in my DNA. So I grew up and I wanted to be a banker, and I always manifested that I should be able to work in different countries, experience cultures, meet people, and thankfully I got to do all of that over 25 years: India, Asia, Europe, Africa. So it was a great journey, and as most of us learned from our lowest points, I went through a couple of very, very tough years: 2014, 15, 16, my marriage, dissolving, losing my dad, losing my pet dog, etc., etc. And we, from the depths of despair, is when we actually rise. And for me, psychology was always a pet subject, and mental health, was so important. And and 2020 has shown us that. And I quit my job in 2018, end of 2018, and I returned back to India after a 13-year journey. I had this moment of epiphany when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Feb 2013. And I said, there's more to life than banking. Most of us bankers make big bonuses and stuff like that. But we really don't do too much for society. If worldwide, financial literacy, these are things we should be doing, but bankers don't do. And hopefully it will change one day. So I came back in 2019 and I traveled a lot. I went to Bhutan to study the gross national happiness concept. I went to Sri Lanka to a monastery, the Golden Temple, all of that. And pretty much it was clear that I think, happiness is something that really is a low-hanging fruit out there. So I set up a small happiness technology venture, tech partner from Finland, which is the happiest country in the world. And pretty much then the pandemic happened. Then I did a lot of programs, etc., etc. And one of my close friends said, why don't you write a book? You have a good story. And I started piecing it together in August of last year. And in Jan, pretty much I launched a print edition and the audiobook, etc., etc. It's been a great journey, very fulfilling, and it's just begun. Life has just begun for me at 48, as I tell people. Don't ever give up, chase your passion. So that's really a bit of my story.
You do mention in the book about the passing of your father. You do mention about the dissolving of your marriage, but the abiding strength in your life seems to be your relationship with your son Som, and you liken it to Mufasa and Simba from The Lion King. And that's obviously a very important part of the book, Happiness Samurai. We all have our pillars. And would you say today you're a more evolved father thanks to Som?
Hands down. Even if I have to relive my marriage and the pain of it all over again, I would do it because of him. He's made me a much better human being. I think I was a bit selfish, as most people who are single, right? But when you become a parent, your life changes dramatically. You want to think about your child, his welfare, her welfare, and you start becoming less selfless. And, he was conceived in Africa, and that's how his nickname is Simba. So he spent his first 2 years in Tanzania, beautiful place. And that made me Mufasa, So that's really the story we put together. And he is Ikigai, as I would like to say.
More with writer-thinker Mani Anchan up ahead. Stay with us. This is Wasted Love by Offenbach and Lajik. I'm Rishi K, and you're listening to 94.3 Radio 1 One World, your station. Madonna with Sorry. He calls himself a happiness maverick. Mani Anchan also has a book out called The Happiness Samurai.
94.3
This is Good Morning Mumbai with Rishi K.
Radio 1.
The samurai are normally known as fighters, and it's quite a beautiful anomaly that you would combine the word happiness with the samurai. Also, a lesser known fact is that the samurai are very meditative in their approach. I want to talk about the fact that you choose to call this book Happiness Samurai, Mani.
Right. So I think, like, if I can show you the cover, that's the samurai with the katana. He's cutting away the darkness. And that's really what it is. And samurais are noble warriors, right? And they're very meditative. And for them, pulling the katana out is the last resort. So, I think mindfulness, over the last few years has, become getting a lot of eminence, right? Meditation. Everyone talks about waking up at 5. Inbuilding meditation, mindfulness in your daily routine. And for me, I've had this fascination with Japan since I was a kid, to be honest. My dad's granddad passed away before I could meet him. And my mom would jokingly say he went to Japan instead of saying, he died, right? And I kept thinking, like, my granddad is from Japan, for a few years. And, the way their culture, the resilience, anti-fragility. And then, I stumbled upon Ikigai, the book, a couple of years ago through my downtime. And then I said, this is such a beautiful philosophy. And, most of us probably practice a lot of it without knowing it is Ikigai. And that's how the ball started rolling. And for me, The Last Samurai, the movie by Tom Cruise, it remains one of my top movies. And when I started putting together the journey, my mentor, who's a Shaurya Chakra winner, Major Anil Kumar, he said, it should be something with samurai because your journey is that way. And that's how happiness and samurai came together. That's the essence of it.
That's beautiful. Now, I've had the good fortune of interacting with the author of Ikigai, the book. You've also been in the audience, like you told me off the mic. But, for people who are watching and listening to this, Ikigai is such an important fulcrum of The Happiness Samurai, your book. So I'd like you to just explain the concept of Ikigai for those who don't know, and also the miracle that you see happening in Okinawa, which is not really a miracle, but is something that is available to you and me, Manny. And that's one of the primary reasons why you wrote this book. Talk about that.
So Ikigai is a philosophy over 1,000 years from the Heian dynasty. It is tried and tested. It is nothing to do with religion. It is more a philosophy of life. It's a healthy and happy way of living. It comes from Ogimi in Okinawa, and it is part of the blue zone. As Dan Butner says, there are 5 blue zones in the world, and this is the number one. The maximum number of people above 100 years come from Ogimi. And Ikigai is just a philosophy they have embraced. It is basically finding your flow, doing something with passion. So they have, core 10 principles, and that's how they live their life. And I think the most beautiful one is never retiring. Because when we retire at 60 or 58 or whatever that age is, we start losing our purpose, saying, okay, today morning I don't have a radio show anymore. What am I going to do, right? Example. But if you can do your radio show till you're 100, that's going to fuel you. Because you're going to, the last many years, you're adding value to the community. You're adding value to the listeners. You're piecing together beautiful stories. So that's the core of it. Finding your passion, sticking to it, and becoming better each day. And it is not about chasing money, right? If you chase your passion and you become the best at what you do, even if you make sushi, right? But you can do it the best in the world, the money is going to come, right? I mean, that's really what it is. The journey, Ikigai, is all about that. I think after this book came out, it's probably in 55, 56 languages worldwide. Hector Garcia. And, I had the pleasure of listening to you interview him. It is a beautiful philosophy. A lot of countries are now adopting it. New Zealand, Finland, Ireland, they're all adopting a well-being budget. And I think that's the way forward, even for companies, even for schools. They must teach happiness like they teach in the Nordic countries as core part of the curriculum. So that's my take on Ikigai.
Hold on to that thought as I bring on some music. It's Masked Wolf with Astronaut in the Ocean. Only on 94.3 Radio 1, One World, your station. My name is Rishi K. Legendary hit Maroon 5 and Christina Aguilera with Moves Like Jagger, building on the Japanese philosophy of Ikigai, which is finding a true purpose and flow in life, is Mani Anchan's book Happiness Samurai. Each chapter is full of wonderful life lessons. More conversation with Mani.
94.3
This is Good Morning Mumbai with Rishi K.
Radio 1.
I love the chapter saying the role of the mother and the comfort of food, which is actually Harahachi Bhumi. I hope I pronounced that right. And
Yes.
I think everybody who's listening or watching to this one will really take away stuff from that. So talk me through that, please.
Right. I think it's one of the top favorite chapters for people, right? Because
Certainly.
everyone is close to their mother. Food. I mean, we live for food, right? So I think, Hara Hachibume is the concept of 80% food rule in Ikigai. So it's basically stopping at an 80% threshold level And it's not eating less. Small meals, wholesome food, but do not stuff yourself, because we get lethargic, right? I mean,
True.
at lunchtime over work, I mean, if you have 4 parathas, then, the afternoon's gone. So that's really what it is. So it's 80% food rule. And then how basically the chapter explains how my mother became my role model. She was an economist. She was a trailblazer in the 60s and 70s. And every Sunday, because that was the only day she had off, she and I would go to the fish market, and then she would pick the fresh produce, from farm to the table, and then we would come home. Then she would grind the masala in that old stone, if you remember. There used to be an old grinding stone, and the most juiciest of Mangalorean cuisine was on the table at 1:30, and everyone would eat together. So I think that was my most happy memory, and I tried to translate that into the book and into the chapter about how we can have a role model, how we can eat right, and how we can transfer those learnings into self and to our family. So that's the chapter all about, the food rule.
What I also love is that at the end of each chapter, Manny puts out a small little, almost like a note paper, where you're requested to fill in and do a journaling. And you did mention briefly that journaling really helped you. And it really puts into, brings to the fore of consciousness what is in the subconscious mind. Is that an apt way of describing it, Manny?
Absolutely. So if you can see, this is a journaling page. It's put in an olden style, the way we grew up writing the school books. So at the end of each chapter, I'm asking 10 questions to the reader. So at the end of the book, you probably need to answer 100 questions, and that becomes a personal thing. And you could refer to this every time. So I think the power of, like Buddha says, your thoughts become words and words become actions. So I wake up every morning at 5 and I do my meditation and I journal at that time. So I pretty much know that subconsciously, I've got to do this through the day. And I think that the power of journaling, again, worldwide psychologists, Adam Grant, all of them are talking about it, that journaling becomes so important. Because if we don't put our thoughts into words, onto a paper, then it's very tough to track it through the day, right? Because we are doing various things. We are a parent, we are a husband, we are a friend, we are a manager, but there are things that we must do and we forget to do. So to be mindful, I think journaling becomes important.
A last leg of conversation with author and happiness maverick Manny Anchan up ahead. Yes, stay with us. It's music producer Zed and vocalist Selena Gomez. This is I Want You to Know, only on 94.3 Radio 1. One World, your station. I'm Rishi K. Mr. Perfectly Fine by Taylor Swift, banker turned writer, philosopher, life coach, and motivational speaker is Manny Anchan. His book Happiness Samurai is the focus of my show today. Our last leg.
94.3
This is Good Morning Mumbai with Rishi K.
Radio 1.
Now, I know that you've talked about travel, you've talked about nature, things that really appeal to you. But, your pet also makes it to the book. And it's so important to have, your friendly neighborhood dog, your pet, somebody that's really a part of your family. And that's such an important part of the book. I'd like you to talk through that. For those of you, just to fill you in, before Manny and me got into this recording, his friendly neighborhood dog, his family member, was barking around the house. So talk about how that finds place in the Happiness Samurai.
So I'm going to show you a picture. He's usually there on all my calls. There he is. He's a Belgian Malinois from Ukraine. And I'm just going to give you a small, quick story about it. So as I was growing up, we came from a lower middle class. And every day there was a 1 kilometer journey from school to home and back. And near the railway station, there was this vendor who would sell those popping dogs. The spring, the head would pop up and down, right? And that probably cost whatever. And I would always want that particular thing. I had this fascination. I love dogs and I would get puppies home. But my mom said, what are you going to get getting this doll home? It serves no purpose. When you grow up, get your own dog. So in 2005, I got Elsa, who was a golden retriever. And she came from Ooty, and she was the most gorgeous companion. She lived with me in 4 countries, 2 continents. She died in 2016, and she'll always be a part of me. And as you can see, I have a tattoo. You'll never walk
for those
alone.
of you who are listening to us on pure audio, it's a wonderful tattoo of Elsa, which is there just below his elbow. In his, in his hand. That's wonderful.
And it says, "You'll never walk alone." And I got Max in 2016. So he spent 6 months with she groomed him, she trained him. And, I think living alone with him has been a godsend. And a lot of people in 2020 who lived with a pet dog have said similar stories that, they never felt alone. a dog protects you, right? A pet protects you, and
Sure.
you get more positive because of that. You will go for a walk because of that, and you won't feel alone. And 2020 has been brutal, Rishikesh, for a lot of people, including myself. Living alone is not easy, and Bombay is a very, very tough city, right? Because everyone is doing their own thing. So Maximus his name is inspired from the Gladiator, Russell Crowe, and he's now 5, and he is just a happy part of my family. I mean, I go to bed because I know he's protecting me.
That's wonderful.
Thought, yeah, and that's it. He's there. My son loves him, and I would ask people to get dogs or adopt strays.
I'm going to sign off this interview with talking about your learnings from Bhutan and Ichigo Ichi. Did you say Ichi I? Ichi A. Okay.
Ichigo. That's living in the moment, pretty much.
Living in the moment.
Summarize.
It's so amazing. So talk to me about learnings from Bhutan and that before we sign off on this wonderful chat.
Right. So in 2019, in August, I went to Bhutan. I always wanted to go because that's the only country in the world. As early in the 70s, they introduced a gross national happiness concept. So they measure their citizens on a GNH index. And I went there to meet the think tank, the Center of Bhutan Studies, kindly arranged by the ambassador in Bhutan. And, I interviewed a lot of people on the road in the villages. And they all said, happiness is something that can be ingrained in our system. And, they are not, mind you, they're not the happiest country in the world, right? Because they don't have so much economic resources. But when you go there, you see people are generally living in the moment. They enjoy their food, and pretty much they're protecting their community. And there's a lot of calmness. So if anyone has not been to Bhutan, I would say just go there for a holiday and discover yourself. I also did the Chalela Pass, which is close to 4,000 meters on a solo biking trip. And then that's where that moment came saying, this is something that needs to be done. Happiness can be taught and technology can be used for it. And that's really the end chapter. So we begin with Kilimanjaro and we end with Bhutan, and then 2020, and that's when the book came. That's how I would explain Bhutan. It's been the most wonderful trip for me.
And you haven't explained that beautiful word that you taught me how to pronounce.
Ichigo Ichie. Is that? Yeah. So that's living in the moment. I think in all we do, we must be mindful that we have 24 hours, and pretty much we don't own anything. We don't own a job. We don't own a car. We don't own an apartment. All we own is now, like Eckhart Tolle says. And what we do at the end, one of my favorite lines in the book is, in the end, when we measure our lives, make happiness the only number. Time is the only thing we own, and what we do with it, it's a finite number, right? Time is a finite number. What we do morning to evening is what makes us or breaks us. So that's the explanation of Ichigo Ichie.
Beautiful. Mani Anchan, would you give out your social media handles so that everybody who's got this really interesting interview can go and check more stuff out as far as your career and your life is concerned? Right.
So my Instagram handle is Happiness Samurai. Pretty much easy, Happiness Samurai. My website is happinesssamurai.com. Twitter is also Happiness Samurai. So, I'm pretty much active on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I'm putting out daily posts on happiness and, making people smile. And through these testing times, that's all we can do at the moment.
Thanks very much. What an experience the Happiness Samurai has been, and may you go on from strength to strength. Thank you, Mani.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Arigato gozaimasu. Ciao.
Here's Justin Timberlake, Can't Stop the Feeling, right here on 94.3 Radio 1 One World, your station. My name is Rishi K.